Welcome to Becoming Parents Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Campbell. I'm a doula in Washoe County, Nevada, a Medicaid provider, a lactation educator, childbirth educator, and mom of 18. You can find me and connect on doulainreno.com. Remember, give a shout out to those who are brave enough to share their stories with us on how they have become parents. Let's dive in. Welcome to Becoming Parents Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Campbell. And today I'm here with Carrie. Carrie, I'm glad to have you on. How are you doing today?
I'm so great. Thanks so much for having me, Jennifer.
This is exciting. And it's exciting because, well, it's your journey. I'm not going to do any spoiler alerts. Just jump in and share your parenting journey with us.
Yeah, definitely. So you and I were talking beforehand. I recently started a podcast to share my journey and to connect with other parents because I felt so alone in my journey. And I'm now realizing my journey is not one of solitude. There have been so many other parents that have been through similar situations. I was a speech therapist and a teacher before I became a parent. So I thought I knew everything. I was like, don't worry, husband, I've got this. Like, kids are my jam. I know everything. I worked with birth to age 3 was my specialty when I was doing speech therapy. I would go into the homes and work with kids who weren't talking. So I was like, I've got this. Like, we are just sit back and relax, Stan, our husband. And I quickly realized that was not the case. So I had mentioned have 2 kids, and it was really cool because I got to see like both ends of the spectrum for myself. I went into the first labor and delivery thinking I knew everything, went to a quick birthing class at the hospital that really just made me fearful, and read all of the fearful books of not to expect when you're, or what to expect when you're expecting, which really just brought out all the fear for me and made me this perfectionist mom. It just like bred this perfection in me of like, I have to get them on a sleep schedule. I have to have them feed at the certain time. I have to have all of these perfect. They have to have a swaddle. They have to swaddle like at every certain amount of hours. And we can't do regular diapers, hon. We have to have the cloth because that is, natural, like all of these mindset pieces that I thought I had to have for perfection. And it didn't really go the way we thought it would go. We had the contraction monitor turned off, and I had an epidural, and so I couldn't feel when I had contractions. So I had a little bit of some complications and pain that I ended up with in myself. Luckily, my son, he was amazing. He was born, and he looked at us with these bright blue eyes, and my world shook. I was like, we are not prepared for this. And my husband leaned over and he said, oh my gosh, Carrie, he's beautiful. And my son turned and looked at my husband with these fluorescent blue eyes. And we're like, who is this little being? And why do you have blue eyes? We both have hazel. So it was just day one, all of these surprises and learning to just drop our expectations because we continued down the path for several months of trying to continue to fit in that bubble, in that box of what parenting needed to look like. It took a couple of spiritual people in my life, my mom, my grandma, some spiritual friends that said, you need to throw away the parenting books. You need to throw away the schedules, the expectations, the everything in your mind and your anxiety and all these pieces that you're trying to do, and listen to your heart. Follow your kid. And I remember I was in the closet bouncing on this ball one time, and I looked down at my son, and he had his pacifier and his 85 sleep gadgets on. He looked up at me like, Mom, stop. Quit it now. Put it down. I will show you when I'm hungry. I'll show you when I need help. I'll show you when I need a changing. Stop with the reusable diapers or the cloth diapers. That was not a good one for us. And just parent from your heart, and you know what I need. So that an experience was what helped me to awaken to the spiritual side of myself that I was raised with, but had shelved when I tried to be the perfect mom.
It's so crazy as a doula with first-time parents. I tell them like baby's on you, most magical moment in life. Like it's shockingly magical in different ways for
Yes.
everyone, right? And you're
Yes.
in that
Yes.
golden hour and we get baby latch for the first time and I'm going to leave. And
Yeah.
you guys are going to be alone with this baby. And it's very common
Yes.
for you to think something like, why did everybody leave us alone with this baby? Like we know what we're doing. And you've got this. You've got it.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be
Yeah.
fine. Because I think that is it's like explaining what salt tastes like to someone who's never had salt. Like
Yes,
not
I
really
love that.
possible, but then you'll try salt and you'll be like, oh no, I get it now. I get what you were saying,
Mhm,
but it's not
mhm.
possible to describe what that feeling's like when they put that baby on you and like, oh my gosh, it was really a
Yeah,
baby in my belly. Like you knew there was, but like
yeah,
there really
yeah.
was, right?
It's a whole
And
new level.
I also know my moms on day 3 who are like, so I have the timer for the feeds. I'm like, this is not going to go well. Like this is okay. Okay. Because
Yeah.
you're just setting yourself up. Look, you're going to feel like a failure every day after being a parent. Not always in
Hmm.
a bad way, but you're going to feel
Hmm.
like, did I bring
Yeah.
my best for this child that I love more than I even thought possible? And
Hmm.
don't add insult to injury by setting yourself on a timer. You were pretty extreme about like all the gadgets. Like you were like, I'll take all of them, please. Every stressor, I would like that. What was it like when you got rid of them? Because like for cloth diapers for me, I did it because I wanted to and it was great. I went
Hmm.
from
Hmm.
disposable to cloth, but
That's cool.
I didn't do it for some certain reason. And when I traveled, I ditched them because it was hard.
Yeah. Yeah. You definitely got to ditch those traveling. I can't imagine. Um, for us, my kiddo, every time he would go, so, and I don't know if this was for every person that tries cloth diapers. I have very sensitive kiddos, which I did not
Mm.
know, but I should have known, knowing my husband and I, very sensitive people. Um, every time he would go to the bathroom or he'd go number one in his cloth diaper, he would wake up. So he'd be in the middle of sleeping, go to the bathroom and wake himself up. So it was like, then he was teaching himself to continue to wake up. It was like once an hour at one point. So we were like,
Yeah.
okay, we're ditching these. This does not work for us. We need some regular diapers. And that's like a metaphor, right? Ditching the plan, just jumping in, not tipping your toes in with the plan, but just jumping full into parenting and parenting the way that you want to do it, not the way that you think you have to do it. So, yeah, releasing that was like earth shattering. And number one, the biggest factor was we got sleep. Like,
Oh, oh, what?
we can think again. We can process. We can be emotionally regulated ourselves, which is what my husband and I needed.
Right.
And so, yeah, ditching that, it was like a parent version of enlightenment, is what I would call it.
Don't you think that parenting's like junior high school? You're never going to get it right, and there's always somebody critical. I feel like it's so
Yes.
weird. Women tend
Yes.
to kind of be like that anyway, which sucks because, like, we're going through infertility, we're going through pregnancy, we're going through birth and miscarriage and postpartum. Like, we should be high-fiving each other in the line when we see
Yes.
boxes of pads on the
Yes.
conveyor
I
belt, right?
see
We should
you.
be like, oh, oh, girl, here's some chocolate with that, right? Like, whatever.
Yes.
But we're
Hmm.
not, and we don't talk about things. And then the moment you show your pregnancy, suddenly
Hmm.
your community property. My daughter, one of my girls, when she got pregnant, she's like, what do I do if somebody touches me? I said, reach out and put your hand on their stomach. Like, people would freak out, but like, why do all of a sudden do you think you can touch me in a way
Mm.
that you feel is inappropriate if I do it back to you? Like, literally let the
Yeah.
person touch you, then reach out and touch their stomach.
I
And
love it.
like, I just thought this was touch a random stranger's stomach day. Like, it's just
Hmm.
not okay. And then what do they proceed to do? Tell you their worst case scenario, even if it wasn't them, the worst story they've ever heard about pregnancy, labor, delivery.
Yes.
Why do we do this? And then you're a parent and you're not going to do it right. There's a critic that you are
Hmm.
using cloth, that you're not using cloth, that you are doing it like you
Yeah.
will never get it right. So you need to figure out how to do it the way that works for you because there's always going to be a
Hmm.
critic. It's
There's
so
always a critic.
crazy.
Yes, yes. And there's always that first question, right, when the baby's born and you're like, "Oh, look at my little baby." And somebody will come up to you, "How are they sleeping?" It's like,
They're
"They're a
not.
newborn.
Do
They're
they?
not sleeping. Why add some salt in my wound if they're not getting sleep?"
I mean, if they have to breastfeed every 2 hours, 3 hours at night, with maybe one stretch of
Mhm.
4 or 5,
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
one's sleeping. How do you that? And that's
No.
every baby needs to be doing that. Like, how are you able to do that? Are you sleeping through this? I don't get it.
Hmm.
Yeah, how are they
Hmm.
sleeping? Like you've reached some pinnacle if you can get them to sleep through the night, which for a newborn is unhealthy. So,
Mm.
why is this even an expectation? You
Yeah.
threw all of this stuff out how freeing was that? And then what did you do to figure out what was your jam? Like, how did you figure that
Mhm.
out? Like, how, because you're wanting to tune into him specifically. What did that look
Mhm.
like? And then baby number two, how different was that?
Yeah. So following his lead, watching like when was he crying out to eat? When was he crying out to sleep? Following the timing that he was showing me and his needs. Instead of being like, the timer's going off, I'm going to be feeding. Now it's time to go to sleep. We got to keep you on that cycle. So watching him for the clues. And then also learning my mind, body, spirit connection of knowing when I felt like something was off. And that's something that has continued since, I mean, he'll be turning 10 this May. And so it's still in my body, it's still in my system of, for us, when he was a baby, if I would eat dairy, he would get silent reflux. And
Oh,
I tuned in and I heard that one. That was like, don't feed him dairy, don't feed him gluten. And I had no research for the gluten one. I just had this feeling. And then when he was 12 months old, I gave him a pancake once and we watched, it was his first gluten experience. We watched the eczema go up his back and then he ended up with an ear infection. And my husband's like, how did you know that? I'm like, it comes to me. I can't scientifically explain it, which is hard when I'm married to somebody who is a statistician and evidence
mhm.
based. But he's now learned, okay, I'm going to follow, I'm going to try it. And now my son will be having like really dysregulated week when he's 10 and or almost 10. And I was like, you know what? I wonder if it's that Boy Scout popcorn that we bought. I swear that, let me read the ingredients. And I go back and I look, artificial and flavoring. I'm like, that's why he keeps losing his mind. He's eating like two handfuls of it every lunchtime. He's taking it in his lunchbox. I took that away. We're feeling great. So it's like this mind body connection was what I was starting to understand. And my advice with learning that is um what are you drawn toward? What do you, if you hear those messages, try it. There's no harm in trying certain things. I mean, I'm not a doctor, so I can't say like try formula when you were going to breastfeed. I mean, I'm saying certain things in your mind that you feel drawn toward. Yeah, I'm trying to add that caveat in there. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
love
trying it
that.
out and trying to go with it. That was something that was really helpful. And then also turning to support from people around you, sharing some of those pieces, people that are going to lift you up, not people that are going to be like, I need to fix you. Here's how you do it because you're doing it all wrong. But I had a friend who is a child psychologist. And as soon as I was pregnant with my second daughter, she was like, you need to go to this doula. You need to try this doula class. You need to take your husband. It's going to teach him tools. You need tools for your labor and delivery.
Hmm.
And I followed it and I tried it. So having that support system around you is so helpful. We tried it. My husband had all of these tools for when things got hard. I ended up having my water break I'm trying to remember how many weeks. She was 4 weeks early, so 36 weeks. And
Mm.
we were sleeping in the middle of the night. We had our son in between us. My mom came to watch him. And I swear, my daughter, who I was hoping would be a Taurus, was like, no, 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 I am going to come as an Aries. I am breaking out now a month early. And we were going into the hospital, and my husband saw this book in the ER as we're, or the ER as we were coming through. It said Warrior Princess. And he's like, look, that's our daughter, and that's you. You're going to be a warrior princess. She's going to be fine. You're going to be fine. Everything is going to work out in the good. Let's stay in that mindset. And that's what I needed in that moment was staying in that mindset. I mean, we had nurses coming in and saying, she's going to have to come in the NICU. She's going to have to, my husband and I learned to ask questions with our first labor and delivery. So we
Yeah.
were saying like, what's the reasoning? What does this look like? She hasn't come in yet. What are you thinking? And, because we asked questions, they thought we weren't going to let her go into the NICU. So they started to get intense with us and they would hold up like pictures of your baby's brain at 36 weeks. We're like, okay. So I got so nervous that I had to like release that to let the contractions come again, right? But the doula came and everything worked out. And she ended up being able to lay on my chest. I ended up having her naturally because I had all of these tools and tricks and mindsets and positive pieces with us. And my husband felt empowered. I felt empowered. We didn't even need the doula, but she was there as backup empowerment. And we were able to have her on my chest for a minute. They had to take her because they were looking at her oxygen levels. My husband ended up talking to the NICU nurse and said, it's really important for her to nurse. She really wants to nurse her. Can you bring her back? And she was able to come back and nurse with me before they took her back. I ended up walking in. They make you get the IV bag when you're in the hospital. I don't understand the whole thing, but I ended up walking in with the IV bag and like coming in. I'm ready to nurse her in the NICU. And my husband's like, you're not walking with like this with the first birth. What is this? Who is this Carrie? And it's just such a different experience. The connection I had with myself, the connection I had with my husband, the place I could be in my own body and my own heart. And I could really connect with my daughter at that point. I did not have all of that with my son in the first pregnancy. So even though it was a more stressful situation, it just felt so much more harmonious in that time.
I think if I'm a doula at someone's birth and they are educated and empowered, and I just sit back and allow things to happen, I'm not needed, then I've done my job. I'm still there if
Right.
anything else is needed. But if you can get to that point where the parents take over and ask the questions, like that is the best moment in the world, because a huge part of the role is education and empowerment. I'm not an advocate that's confrontational. I work with the medical professionals all the time. For you,
Yeah.
this is the most incredible day of your life. For me, it's a Tuesday. Like I'm here all the time doing this stuff, right? So if I've done a job well done, if in the middle of the chaos of that is labor and delivery, I'm sitting back and just proud of you. Like that's great. But
Hmm.
sometimes it takes that first experience. I mean, the whole thing's like
Hmm.
if you have to explain salt to someone, like there's no way to explain what labor and delivery is going to be like. But I love that
Yeah.
it could have been a more stressful situation. Different.
Hmm.
First time is always, I think it's fear of the unknown. You just haven't done it yet. But
Yeah.
a more stressful situation with the baby and yet much more powerful. And you knew
Hmm.
what you needed and you knew what questions
Yeah.
to ask. It is
Yeah.
interesting that you brought up that when parents ask questions, medical professionals think of that as resistance. And it's not.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
understanding. It doesn't necessarily mean resistance. So that's interesting because I think that's common. So
Mm.
she is in the NICU. You went in and breastfed her. That was fine. How long were you guys there? What was that situation like? And then take me through that parenting journey because no kid's the same.
Yeah. Yeah, we were there for 4 days.
Mm.
And we were really lucky. My parents were helping me with our son for a little while, and then we had to switch off time in the NICU. And I think there's a little bit of healing that I had to do with myself during that time because I still have this fear with my highly sensitive kiddo. She's even more sensitive than her brother, which is saying a lot because we're all very sensitive in our house. There's still that piece that I have to help myself heal from in that I wasn't there with her 24/7.
Mm.
There were moments where I had to sleep at 3 a.m. There was one point where my husband, we would switch off having our son and drive in to feed her. And there was a 3 a.m. one that he drove in for, and he was falling asleep nursing her. And then the NICU nurses said, it's okay. We can feed her. You can take one time off. Like, get some sleep. I'm worried about you being on the road. And so there was that self-healing piece that my husband and I had to do of if we were there every single time, if we were with her all that time, would she be so sensitive? Would she have taken 3 months where she would only nap in the Solly wrap on me for nap times? There were times when she was going through that and napping only on me. I studied Reiki. I'm only level 1, but that energy work I would do for myself, and I would tell myself when I would do Reiki on myself, she's okay, she's healthy, it's okay, everything happened for whatever reason, and she's going to be okay. You don't need her to nap on you to feel safe for her. She can nap in her bassinet, she can nap there. It's okay. Heal yourself, Carrie. I'm healing you. And then I would also do Reiki on her. And I would give her Reiki and I would say, you are safe in your bassinet. You don't need to be attached to mom. I'm still here. I still hear you. I still see you. And I'm still connected to you. You don't need to be touching me 100% of the time. So it took me a few weeks of doing that energy work and saying that to her and to myself, where we could get to a healthy napping pattern. But yeah, it was, oh gosh, having number two, it's just a completely different experience. It's,
Yeah.
you know what's coming, but
Hmm.
also you have to remember that they're different because in my mind, I'm like, well, he went through a sensitive period at 3. Okay, she's going to go through that same sensitive period. And it's different. Whatever calms him maybe didn't calm her. You know,
Right. They're
maybe
like
she's more
snowflakes.
sensitive.
Like you can't believe genetically they're the same and they're so, I mean, everybody
Yeah.
has a different personality, but they're literally born with this
Mm-hmm.
personality that's so wildly different
Shoot.
one from the next, like wildly different.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's crazy. I think my first daughter was in the NICU, and the nurses at one point told me, go home, drink a glass of wine. Don't worry about your breast milk. It's totally
Yeah.
fine. You have
Yeah.
got to go home and get some sleep. Like, you are not good.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be better here when like, there's got to be balance in that. And that was one of
Yeah.
the hardest times that I went home when I went to the
Yes.
house, like an hour away, and I had a glass of
Oof.
wine and I slept. I still pumped and all that stuff. And then I went back to the
Mm-hmm.
hospital next day. But they were right. I
Yeah.
really did need to just
Yeah.
take a breath because then I showed up better. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, look, if you want shame, have kids.
It's so
if you want,
true.
if you want fear, guilt, and shame, just have a
Yeah.
child. It comes equipped with it. You're
Mm-hmm.
plenty,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody even needs to tell you what a bad job you're doing because you're already doing that to yourself. I mean, we
Yeah.
question everything we do, right? I love
Mm-hmm.
how different the second experience was, and I really love how it was a tougher situation and better because
Yeah.
like that says so much. Tell me about how things changed with speech therapy because you've been working with 0 to 3 and you had it all
Mm-hmm.
figured out and you have this, I got it. I the parenting alpha omega right here. Obviously you
Oh
realized that
gosh.
right away that that wasn't the case. But how
Yeah.
did it change your career? And then take us through the podcast and all, everything
Yeah.
that's changed from having kids.
Mm-hmm. You know, I'm actually going to reflect on something that recently happened to me. So we started looking at different counselors and support and OT and things that we could help for our kids. Having that evidence-based side, I tend to look for that, right? You tend to go back into the education and thinking like this is going to help us. But I recently went to a provider that had OT, speech, and counseling in one clinic. And I was talking to them and explaining my kids' profiles and what it looks like and how they're a perfectionist on the outside and they don't want anybody to see anything different about them. And I was going through all the different things that we've tried in counseling and therapy and OT and all these things. We've been in it for years. And she was like, I don't think there's anything we can really do for you. I don't think there's anything different that we can bring for you. And I was like, I think we've hit the end of the medical, what we can do right now for us. And so I started to that's where I say I'm bridging the evidence based practice with some of the spiritual and holistic practices and the
Mhm.
energy work side. So I'm going back to look at doing my level 2 and level 3 Reiki. The Reiki has really helped my kiddos. And so for me, I have that evidence-based side. It gives me an understanding of what their system is like, but understanding that sometimes that there's other things that can help us. So we've done like family constellation sessions to help us understand how sometimes we can have trauma or energy from previous generations that can come into this era. Our kids can be feeling that energy and not knowing why they feel so angered. And that really helped my son with some of the anger he was feeling. So I ended up starting Heart to Heart Parents podcast because raising my kids are labeled the neurodiverse, highly sensitive, gifted, and talented, and also intense. They don't put intense anywhere, but just this intensity that they are born with, just wanting to change the world and wanting to do everything, be a 40-year-old in a 10-year-old's body. But these pieces of these holistic ideas and philosophies have really helped my kids, helped my mindset, helped me to be in my space, be in my heart energetically, and my kids really feel that. So I'm starting to teach them some of these mindful tools that I use with myself, some of these spiritual tools that I use for myself. And it's really been amazing. There's been I just am releasing on Friday an episode. It's talking about grounding ourselves, helping our kids to ground. And it's interesting because you hear grounding with OTs, but now we're hearing grounding,
Oh,
or we
yeah.
also hear grounding in the spiritual sense, right? So it's like
Yeah.
both of us are thinking how we can get into our minds, but we need to connect with our bodies, or how it can be really hard to be in our human form. So we're like, oh, I just want to be up here. I want to be connected. I don't want to be in my human form. It's painful and hard. So that's a piece that I've been working on as well, and doing some guided meditations with my 6-year-old to help her with some nightmares. So
How do they like, and I mean, I know you say they respond to Reiki and you've been doing it with
mhm.
her since she was okay, so they're 6 and 10.
Yep, yep,
How
or
do
almost
they
10. Yep.
how do they respond to that? Is it immediate? I always feel like I'm too close. So when
Mm,
I'm an NLP
yep.
practitioner and I don't work with my kids because I feel like I'm too close and I can be part of the problem. And for those two
Mm,
reasons, I don't work with my kid. I've never worked with my kids, but you do.
interesting.
So yeah,
Yeah.
see, when you were saying it, I'm like, interesting that you,
Yeah.
I don't. Um,
You know what's
yeah,
cool with it is being the mom, as I'm working on them with something that's coming up for them, it
yeah,
often brings up stuff for myself.
I'm
So
sure.
I'm finding out the inner child pieces that are opening up as they're going through these different areas. And when I'm doing that Reiki work, you can sometimes hear those pieces of what you need to work on for yourself. Or if I'm doing a guided meditation for them, I'm also receiving that energy exchange for myself, or energy work for myself. So it's been really good for me. I haven't had it be in a negative version. But I'll have to think about that more.
I mean,
And
I,
maybe
I
have a
love when
Reiki
we
person try it.
I'm just curious because I was so adamant to not work with or
Hmm.
on my kids. So, I mean, there's not a right or wrong necessarily, or good or bad. I
Yeah.
just felt like, yeah,
Interesting.
too close. And if I was part of the issue that they were having, including that generational stuff, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
that I didn't want to ever do anything that made it worse. And what's it like to work on yourself?
Um, it's been a huge tool for me doing it for myself. It's helped me to connect more strongly with my heart, my intuition, connecting with the universe. It's opened so many doors. It's actually how I got the idea of starting the podcast, was during a Reiki session on myself. So
Oh, I love that.
yeah, yeah. So it's been amazing. I
Tell,
I would recommend it to any parents or anyone.
you're still a speech therapist.
I have the label, but I'm not working in it. I looked at going back, and I had a physical reaction. Like my body
Oh,
shut
yep.
down. Like, nope, you're not going to do this. It's energetically for me, raising my two intense, spirited, gifted kiddos. It's like there's nothing left. I don't have anything. Once I'm done giving to myself, my kids, my partner, there's nothing left in me to give to other children. So the thought of
Yeah,
doing
yeah.
speech therapy with other kids was like too
No,
much for me.
I can definitely understand that. Tell me what you started the podcast recently. Tell me what that's like if you have guests and
Mhm.
how people can find you and reach out
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah. So my podcast is called Heart to Heart Parents. And we have a website, Heart to Heart Life. And we're on Instagram. We love to share like tips and scenarios and helpful tools on Instagram. I have guests on, I release guest episodes on Tuesdays. And then here and there, I'm releasing solo episodes, little quick bonus episodes of like 10, 12 minutes with ideas and tips and tools for parents to try with their kids. I release those here and there on Fridays. But as a busy mama, I'm trying not to put too much pressure on myself. So that's here or there. Yeah, so it's been really fun. And I am learning so much because, as you know, as we do these podcasts, we learn and grow ourselves. And that part has been amazing.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. I've loved having you on.
Thank you. It's been so wonderful to connect with you.